This is episode 108 in our road to Unicum, and today I review the Object 430U. This is a tier 10 Russian medium tanks in World of Tanks, and it has the most obnoxious armor layout of any tech tree medium tank. The upper front plate is around 270 millimeters effective, and the lower plate is relatively soft at 175 millimeters of armor, but you can generally protect that with terrain. And then, as with a lot of the Russian mediums, the turret is titanium. Just like with the Object 430, the upper side hull armor is angled, and by angling you can make it auto bounce, and then this front area here of the upper plate, because your hull is angled, you can boost the effective armor to over 200 millimeters effective. You still need to be careful about getting shot through your drive wheel. That'll both damage your tank and immobilize you. But overall, the armor, fantastic for a medium tank, is just ridiculous. You know, and that upper front plate will basically bounce the majority of tier 10 silver ammo that is fired at it from lights, mediums, and even most heavies. So we're going to look at a pair of battles. First up is an all tier 10 Ruinberg, and then we'll look at a battle in Paris against 9s and 10s. Now, this is an asymmetrical map, and where their tanks are trying to get to is the E6 hook. It's a really dangerous location. If they get there, they can pretty much break the posture of most of our tanks that are out in field. And then I'm trying to get to the building over by E9. And notice here, I'll go ahead and take a snapshot because obviously they can spot me. I do not repair the ammo rack. Normally ammo racks are terrible, but I wanted to save the repair kit in case I got tracked to make sure I could get to this position here. So this position is a pretty good counter against their tanks that have pushed into the middle of the map for a couple reasons. One, there are buildings to my left, so that protects me from fire from the south, and there's a little pile of rubble here on my left which I can use to hide my lower plate, and in addition there are lots of bushes here to work with. So it's got that trifecta I always talk about of hard cover with adjacent bushes and soft cover and a good field of fire. And so the main thing I'm going to be looking to do here, because their tanks have already aggressively pushed over to the E lane, is fire on their tanks in city. And this is a dynamic, like in a lot of cases, what you'll be doing is firing on tanks where you've got flanking shots, not the tanks necessarily closest to you, right? So that's true right now. I don't really have a shot on the Centurion AX, or at least only the upper part of his turret is exposed, and I don't have a shot on the 140. I need to be careful about being too close to these bushes when I fire if the 140 is peeking out from one of those windows. And a lot of our tanks in field, I guess we've already lost 2 tanks, but our tanks in field are doing the correct thing. If their tanks have reached where the Object 140 is over by those windows at E6, the only places you can play field safely are the back line along the A, which is generally very weak. It's a sniper's location, where I am over by E9, and then being on the 0 lane because there are bushes there. The problem about being on the 0 lane is when you fire, you're going to blow your camo and you're potentially spotted by the 140. But thankfully, every time the 140 is peeking, it looks like our strivs are punishing him for it. And the 140 is going to have a hard time spotting me even when I fire, because I'm being very careful to make sure that these bushes are always, is it translucent? Is that the word? They look solid, so that even when I fire, I still retain their camo. And this is the interesting duality of this tank, right? Just like with the Object 430, it is both very good in terms of vision control, right? Because this tank, with the concealment skills and Brothers in Arms, you're looking at a camo value around 35, which is excellent. And then this tank, when it needs to, can also brawl really well because of that obnoxious armor layout that I talked about earlier. But what's great is, a lot of these tanks that are to the west of me in city, some of them are facing field, like that JP has been facing out toward field. Others of them are facing north-south, so I'm able to hit them with crossfire going from the west to the east, right? So like shots like this, for example, right? When I have them, are looking to penetrate through the side armor, which is a really strong position. And I know I've been talking about this a lot, but that whole concept of perpendicular fire or crossfire is really important in this game, because it does tend to drive outcomes very heavily if one team is doing it much better than the other. And that's the advantage that the North spawn has, is that because the road into city is at a west-southwest angle. If we're not flush from this position here, we can fire down into city. However, there's a couple things that have been really problematic for us. One is this Object 140 spotting through the window, and the rest of the friendly tanks that are out here in field have died except for an arty. Notice I've switched over to high explosive. The most dangerous tank to me right now is that 140. I need to get rid of him because he's the tank that can potentially spot me. And as expected, our arty died. I don't know why he moved east along the A lane. It's just utterly stupid. And I'm gonna swing around counterclockwise here to get away from those 3 tanks that are on the 0 lane. And then I take a shot there on the 60 TP. I still need to work my gun. But obviously I'm close enough now. I'm going to get spotted. I need to back up and get away from this FV215B. And then I decided to create a little bit of space for me. Obviously those 3 tanks that are remaining in field know where I am now. And originally I was going to flat out run. But then I thought, you know what? I'm in a tank that can brawl pretty well. There's some working hard cover here, including this rubbish pile. So let's lay a trap for that leopard who's coming around here. I should have the first shot advantage because I'm pre-aiming on his exit point around the building. So get a nice flanking shot on him, and then this 215B rushes me. And this is hilarious because this is simultaneously good and bad for me. It's good because his gun, because we're face hugging, his gun is aimed into my turret, the frontal turret, which is going to be super hard for him. And this FV is now acting as hard cover for a good chunk of my tank. Now the FV does do something which is smart. He stops, backs up away from me so he can aim down and penetrate me, but I go ahead and switch to him as the target. The leopard, notice, is hiding behind the building, right? And so what I do here is I switch over to the FV, and now I'm circle strafing him. I put one shot in his side and then manage to get a sweet tracking shot there that damages him, and I'm able to force the miss, and then our team finishes off the FV. Now I'm in a ridiculously strong position. I'm fully hauled down behind that dead tank, and then I pick off the Leopard 1. It was amazing. At the time of this battle, I was pretty convinced we had a high chance of losing, but I kept my cool in field, bought time for our tanks so they could clear out the F corridor, and then they came over and helped us out. But it was that was a really dicey match, and if I had died out in field, we probably would have lost the battle. So I managed to just stretch it out long enough so we could come back and make the win. Ended up damaging the majority of the tanks on their side and racking up over 6,600 damage on 12 different targets. Okay, so we're going to look at a battle against tier 10s and tier 9s in Paris. I've only done one other video that was on the Type 64 talking about Paris, and so I want to share my thoughts about playing this map in mediums, and this is applicable to light tanks too. What I like to do is to spot the spokes that go on this side from the northwest down to the southeast, and I knocked over the prior 2 trees really well. This one I just totally messed that up. I bungled this tree. What you want to do is knock the trees down with enough momentum in the right direction so they form a nice broad deep bush for you, but instead I kind of laid the tree on its side, which isn't very helpful. But the nice thing is that E100, as blind as a bat, he's not seeing me even from this distance, and we're able to put in some early damage. I really love what our Waffenträger and Guerilla are doing in terms of playing these spokes. And this is important. Like, some people like to play A, B, and C lanes in field. I think early it's a complete waste of time, because in order to cross over the 3 lane and push east on this map, the same goes no matter which side you're on, you have to cross an enormous kill zone with no concealment and no hard cover. So you're going to get spotted on the way in. And by firing along the spokes here, we're getting some really clean flanking shots, right? So these tank destroyers now have already softened up some of their tanks. Now, something that people like to do is to rush to the E5, E6 plateau in the middle. That can be a pretty strong position, but the problem when you go there is if you do it too early, you can be setting yourself up, or you'll be taking fire from the field as well as from the, in this case, northeast section of field, or from the southeast section of city. So you want to be careful about when you push up. Our tank destroyers are doing a great job with their fire, and I'm so glad that that we don't have tanks over by C4, which is a largely useless position in my opinion. If you're going to play field, the T-54's position is strong because there's that magical trifecta I always talk about: hard cover plus adjacent bushes plus a good field of view. But it tends to be a very passive location because, generally speaking, our team doesn't like to cross the 4 line, their team doesn't like to cross the 7 lane, and so you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for something to happen, and that's not terribly effective for driving outcomes. And then our guerrilla makes a really aggressive play here, pushing up with the 430U, and I definitely want to help him out so we can out DPM this mirror tank of mine. And if I had waited a moment, I would have gotten a shot on the side hull armor, which directly flat that would have penetrated. And then here I'm trying to help our guerrilla by driving between them to provide some physical hard cover for him. Turns out it's not necessarily the guerrilla's able to put him down, but we've got the plateau now, and we're up far enough that I'm able to pressure their tanks that are over by C7. And you do need to be careful when you're on the shelf here, because if their tanks backed up, see where they're 113, if he backed up, he could potentially be firing on our rears, and so he's not doing it. I'm actually sidescraping in case he shows himself, but he's not. And that's probably lack of map awareness on his part. At this point, because this tank has such bully armor, I should go ahead and move down, and you can see there are these little walls here which are effectively covering a lot of my side hull armor. Now granted, my hull is pointed almost perpendicular to these guys, right? So they can penetrate me through the sides of my hull, but like right there when I took that shot, most of my side hull was hidden behind this little soft ridge here, right? And then obviously I take the easier shot, which is on the Conway first, because he's got the much weaker armor, and then with the next shot I take out the M46. Now the T49 has made a very common mistake. You guys hear me talk about this a lot. You need to run before you need to run, right? He's running late and basically hoping that we'll miss him as he crosses the open field, which we do not. Me and the guerrilla finish him off. And then the real question here is, where is their JPE 100? They still got their 3 arties in field, and really our T-54 should be pressing the W key as well as the M46 patent. And I'll talk about the patent in a little bit in a moment, but really I got to find the JPE, and I was trying to shoot his lower plate, but all things considered, if I had the situation again, I should have tracked him first. Now, he's not going to be able to one-shot me, even if that penetrated, but what I did was rush toward him a little bit to cut off the angle and force a shot into the front of my turret, so he didn't end up penetrating me. And then this is a really tough matchup, obviously, for a non-turreted tank facing a flat pancake Russian medium. I can just sit alongside or behind him all day and pick him off. You notice I sometimes turn off auto aim because it can give you some wonky shots in terms of the angles. So if you're directly in front of, directly behind or on the side of a tank, it can work. Like right there I was waiting until that JP was turning, he's rotating counterclockwise, so he's giving me a side shot. And then I don't know what this RD was thinking. Like his gun was actually pointed to the opposite side. I thought he was coming to shotgun me, right? And I've been waiting for a while. I was like, why is it that the other 2 RDs are still alive? So they must have shotgunned the T-54. I wasn't really paying attention, but our M46 has stopped, and he's actually at like 750 health. He's got plenty of health. I can't shotgun him, so I'm obliged to sit here and wait to take out that RD instead of just pushing over and helping take care of the tanks of the southwest. Now, a couple things that are really funny. So our M46, just overly passive player. If you watch his location throughout the minimap, really you can tell how well someone's playing. Steve Young, he's an NFL quarterback, Hall of Famer, said, I can watch tape of myself playing only looking at, if you just showed me game tape of me from the waist down so I can watch my footwork, I can tell you how good of a game that I played, right? And you can really tell how good of a game a person plays if you primarily look at what they're doing on the minimap as the game unfolds, right? Our M46 has been way too passive. Even now, he's just very slowly rotating around the map. Now, based on where the other tanks had gone, I knew that E75, if he were still there on this spoke, was going to be isolated. So I go ahead and snapshot, because even if the snapshot misses, I can keep driving by him, and his hull and turret traverse are so slow that I'm guaranteed to get a easy kill shot either on the rear of his tank or on the side of his hull or side of his turret. Right, and our E100, if you watch this battle, was actually sitting in the back almost the entire time. He was the slowest tank to rotate counterclockwise to get to the south. He never actually got close to the south brawling areas, sort of sitting back and then trying to tell a medium to go into field, And it's amazing to me, the thought process, like just Basically everything that he did was wrong, aside from at the end lasting long enough for me to get over here and help clean up their tanks. But really, you know, the other heavies were in a more relevant position throughout this battle. And, you know, we won this because we crushed the northern flank and were able to circle around the map. So I had to pick up, you know, another 6k damage game here, 5 kills. And again, you know, watch your position and the positions of others in the minimap. You can tell so much about how when someone performs. There is something really interesting, concept called playing on tilt, right? And it comes from gambling. And that happened to me. I played on tilt my first 60 battles of the Object 430U, had a horrific 43% win rate. And once I started to lose, it started to affect my decision making. I got frustrated and actually played worse, which made it more difficult to win, right? And so there's generally a few things you can do when you get on tilt. One is just simply to take a break, right? Wait until you've settled down, then play when you're clear-headed. The other thing is to platoon with friends, people you can work with and hopefully win games that way, or at least have it be more fun, or to play tanks that you really enjoy. But you can see, you know, despite that really rough start, you know, over the next 161 battles, I was able to drag my win rate up to 56%. So during the next 161 battles, I actually, 181 battles, I actually won over 60% of those. So be careful about playing on tilt. It sucks. And generally speaking, when I'm playing on tilt, I tend to either be stupidly aggressive and take risks, and I was doing that with the 430U, trusting the armor to bail me out, which was stupid, or you know, sometimes people on tilt, they're too passive or tentative. You know, the real balance you want to find is being sufficiently aggressive without being stupid, right? And you know, this particular game was one when I was on my comeback trail from being on tilt, where we were in a terrible situation. I was actually like flanked by tanks on multiple sides, but was able to set up traps for the Batchat and the EBR 90 and managed to back off the T95 enough, even though I was totally one-shottable. So we ended up coming back. But definitely playing on tilt is rough. I thought this is a great example because I had such an awful start to playing this tank over the first 60 battles. So let me know what you think of the video and the 430U, and I hope you enjoyed my review of it. Take care.